Hello and welcome to my February wrap-up. I am cheating a little bit by filming this one now because technically I haven't finished this book, which is my 8th book of the month, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, book 1 in the Wheel of Time series, but I fully intend to finish this today. In fact, I will finish this today, even if I have to stay up really late to do it. I will be finishing this today. So I am saying that I've read 8 books in February. I'm not going to be wrapping this one up in this video. I wouldn't have been regardless because I'm actually vlogging this weekend anyway, so you'll hear my thoughts about that one in that vlog. But I'm going to wrap up in this video the other 7 books that I read this month. So statistics wise, as I said, 8 books in the month, 5 of which were by black authors, 3 by white authors. That added up, once I finish this, to 3,536 pages, which actually is only about 100 pages less than last month. But last month I read 11 books and this month I've read 8. So that's kind of interesting. And one of these books was actually really short, which must mean that lots of them were very long. Anyway, off topic. And I did also haul 11 books in February. So I'll link that video up there for you in case you haven't seen it yet. But let us get into the books that I read this month. So the first 5 books that I read are just here, and these were the books that I read for the Black Lit Challenge, which was the readathon run for Black History Month by Seiji over at the channel The Artisan Geek. So I will go ahead and link her channel down below in case you haven't seen it yet. You should. She reads really interesting books, very different to anything that I read, but I just really enjoy her channel and her insights and the discussions that she has about books. So even though I don't necessarily get reading recommendations from her because we just have very different reading tastes, I still really enjoy watching her channel. And her Black Lit Challenge was like a points-based challenge where to win you had to pick up 4 points by reading books by black authors from different countries, and you could also pick up extra points for reading a book by a black disabled author or a black LGBTQIA+ author, etc, etc. So just to run through how I collected my points here. The first book I read was Raybearer by Jordan Ifweko, who is American-Nigerian. Then I read The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu, who is Zimbabwean Scottish. And then we have A Song of Race and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown, who is Ghanaian. Then we have this book is Antiracist by Tiffany Jewell, which is non-fiction, so there was a point for that. And then we have Neil Shusterman's Game Changer, which is, he's from America. So there we go. So that was 5 points, so I won the Black Lit Challenge. But anyway, let me actually talk about the books for a minute because that's what's actually relevant. So firstly, I read Raybearer by Jordan Ifweko, and this one is a fantasy. Shocking, I know. Me reading a fantasy? No. Anyway, this one follows Tarasai, who has a very lonely childhood. She's essentially raised by a revolving door of nannies, I guess, because her mother isn't there for her childhood, and she doesn't know who her father is, and she just sees her mum, who is referred to as the lady, every so often. And the reason for that is explained in the first portion of the book, but I don't want to tell you because I feel like it's interesting to kind of discover that for yourself. But essentially, Tarasai is eventually, when she gets a little bit older, sent to the prince's palace to become one of his council of 11, which are people from each of the regions that are part of this empire, and they become bonded through this thing called the Ray, and it makes them just like, they're friends, but they're so much more than friends. They're like family, but so much more than family. They're mentally linked to one another. And Tarasai goes to the palace to somewhat compete to become one of the Council of 11. But you know, the thing is about this book is it's just so much more than the sum of its parts. It goes in so many directions that you just don't expect at all. But I, when talking about these books, really want to highlight some own voices reviews if I can, because I feel like you're much better off listening to those people talk about this and these books than you are listening to me talk about them. So I'm only going to give you a brief synopsis for them and tell you what I thought. This one I thoroughly enjoyed. It was really great, and I'm really looking forward to finding out what's going to happen next, because I feel like if the sequel is anything like this book, it's going to be incredibly unexpected. So there is a character in this book who has a lisp, so if you want an own voices review for the black representation but also the lisp representation and the ace representation, then go and watch Martina's video, Martina from Strange She Reads. I will of course link the video below for you. Go and watch her video because she vlogs reading this book and she has so many really interesting insights, and I thoroughly enjoyed her video. And then if you want a review that gives a much more thorough summary of the plot of this one, then go and watch Ghost Reader's video, again linked below. And if you want a review that goes much more in depth into the world building and the social commentary that happens in here, which there's a lot of that, then go and watch Natalie's video from the channel Natalie Martinez, again linked below. That is also an Own Voices ace rep review as well. She's demisexual like myself, so definitely go and give those reviews a watch for this one. The next book that I read was The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu, which is, as I mentioned, it's by a Scottish Zimbabwean author, so it's set in Edinburgh but has references to Zimbabwean magic and follows a character named Roper who can see ghosts, and it's kind of like her job, or she's made it her job, to collect messages from ghosts to pass on to people who are left behind and may want to hear messages from the dead. And then Roper gets embroiled in a mystery, shall we say. Now, this is a brand new release, so this just came out at the end of January, which means that I've had a rough time trying to find reviews for this, particularly here on YouTube so far, but I did find one on Goodreads by Elizabeth Burrell, which I thought was really interesting. She talks about how there are actually two magic systems in here. So there's the magic system that Roper's grandmother is trying to teach her, which is kind of a spiritual magic system drawn from the earth and the environment around you. And then the other magic system is the one practiced by the members of the Library of the Dead, and that one is codified, it's written down, there's lots of rules, and you can learn it from books rather than it being passed down from mother to daughter to granddaughter, etc. And Elizabeth talks about how there is this disparity between those two magic systems and the elitism that is intrinsic in that, because you have to pay for membership at the Library of the Dead and it's really expensive, and so it is limiting access to this type of magic as opposed to the Zimbabwean magic that Roper is trying to learn from her grandmother, and that's especially an interesting topic for discussion because Roper actually struggles more with the magic that she is trying to learn from her grandmother, and finds, she's a reader, she listens to audiobooks constantly, and so she finds book learning magic much easier for her. So it's a really interesting discussion, and I definitely recommend going and checking out Elizabeth's review over on Goodreads. I don't think I can link it, but if I can figure out a way to do that, I will link it for you. But in any event, there aren't that many reviews for this one yet because, like I said, it's new, so you should be able to find Elizabeth's review no problem, and I would definitely recommend doing so. After that, I read This Book is Anti-Racist by Tiffany Jewell, which, as I mentioned, is a non-fiction book. This one is non-fiction for young adults, and it's heavily kind of illustrated and laid out in a really teenage friendly way with kind of activity pages and things like that. But I really personally struggle to read non-fiction, so I felt like this was a really great way for me to read some anti-racism non-fiction that wouldn't be super dense and difficult to get into. I don't know what it is about non-fiction, but I just really struggle with it. So this was fantastic. It gave some detail on the history of racism, not too much, a little bit, and then it spoke about identifying racism and what you can do to be anti-racist as well. And a lot of the stuff in here was stuff that I already knew about anyway from the reading that I've done online or things that I've seen in social media, that kind of stuff. So there wasn't anything that was new for me in this, but I still found it incredibly useful to have all of this information in one place, and it's not very long, so I do highly recommend it for anyone. I haven't, again, been able to find any reviews of this, but interestingly, Seiji actually has a review on Goodreads for this one, and she says basically the same thing. It's just a really helpful starting guide to anti-racism, either for young adults or adult readers. And what I think was most useful about this for me was that it helped me to identify what I might want to read more about within this anti-racism genre. Can we call it a genre? It's not really a genre, you know what I'm trying to say. I find that I want to understand the history of racism and why it's a thing more, and I also want to focus my reading on more like practical tips on how to use my white privilege to support BIPOC people. So this was really great, and I highly recommend it, and it did remind me that I needed to not spend this video talking about my views on these books, but point you in the direction of people of colour who have views about these books. So that is what I am endeavouring to do, even though it's actually been quite challenging, which is potentially a discussion in and of itself, but also because a lot of these are very new, that didn't help either. Then I read A Song of Wreaths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown, which has kind of taken the booktonet by storm. I think over the last 6 months, is that how long this has been out? I'm not 100% sure. But this one is a dual perspective story. So we follow Malik and we follow Karina. Malik is travelling to this city and trying to find a home for himself and his siblings and his family in this city, even though they're technically what you would count as immigrants and they're not allowed, so they're trying to kind of sneak in, I guess. And he ends up being pulled into this competition because he is tasked, for reasons that I won't explain, with killing the princess. The princess happens to be Karina, and she is hosting this competition to find herself a husband because she needs the heart of a king for a spell that she wants to do. So she wants to kill Malik and Malik wants to kill her, and so it's it's not even an enemies to lovers story, because they're not enemies per se. They're just kind of on opposing sides of the same goal. I don't know, but it yeah, I think that's all I'll say. I mean, you've probably heard of this already. So it's got this fun competition trope in it. I kind of wish there had been even more of that in the story, but that's kind of a personal thing. I really love a competition trope, but I did enjoy both of these characters. I think it's a really impressive debut novel, and I think that if you want some really good insights into this one, then you should watch Naya from Naya Reads and Smiles vlog. Again, I wasn't able to find a huge amount of videos about this book in particular, which is surprising to me. I thought that there would be a lot more of them, but actually when I was searching I couldn't find many kind of dedicated reviews. But Naya's vlog was really enjoyable, because just to watch, I mean, Naya is a really positive and exuberant person anyway, but then to just get to watch her fall in love with this book and see herself represented in this book and be so excited about that was just so wonderful. And then if you want a more kind of typical book review style video for this one, then you should check out Sydney from the channel Shorty Reads video. She also spends a lot of time talking about how much this book made her feel seen and how much she wishes books like this had existed when she was growing up and when she was a young adult and when she was in school and she was searching for someone who looked like her, who had skin like her, had hair like her, had a home life like her, that she just wasn't finding in books when she was younger. And she found that in this, and it was just so lovely to hear about her experience reading this one. So again, both of those videos will be linked in the description box, and I highly recommend going and checking both of those videos out, because they are just a joy to watch. And then finally, for the Black Lit Challenge, I read Game Changer by Neil Shusterman, which I haven't been able to find any video reviews for either, and again I think it's because it's just so new. It just came out this month, right at the beginning of this month, and I read it immediately because I really enjoy Neil Shusterman's writing, and reading this reminded me how much I enjoy his writing, which is why I end up ordering a couple of his other books and plan to read those very soon as well. But this book is also very interesting to describe. It follows Ash, and this is told in kind of a breaks the fourth wall type writing style, because Ash is talking to you as the reader and narrating what happened to him in this story. So he's an American football player and he is a defender, which means that he has to do tackling, and when he hits someone really hard during a tackle, he bounces himself into an alternative universe, and that keeps happening to him, and just small things are changing, or seemingly small things are changing, but it's making a massive impact on the world and on his life and on the lives of the other people in his life. And Ash is white, he's male, he's heterosexual, he's cisgendered, so he's about as privileged as you can get, and he doesn't see the faults that exist in our world. And so although this is a science fiction adventure story, actually the level of social commentary in this one is just, I mean, it's the same in all of his books, but the social commentary in this is just incredible, and I just loved it. It was just, oh, it was just wonderful. It was so wonderful, and I highly recommend reading this, even though I can't kind of direct you to a specific Own Voices review of it. I still just think that this book is so good, and actually I think that this book is better for white people than for black people or people of colour, because it really shines a light on the privilege that exists in so many different ways. So this one really goes well with this one, actually. I think that reading these in proximity to each other is a really good way to go if you can, or if you're interested in doing that. This was just so good, so good. Then the next book that I read was The Cousins. The Cousins by Karen M. McManus, because I had read quite a lot of fantasy at this point, and so I needed something a little different. So this is a young adult mystery about some cousins who are estranged from their grandmother because their grandmother has cut them, or cut their parents really, out of her life, and nobody knows why. So this story, it's not a murder mystery necessarily, it's more getting to the bottom of why does this grandmother not want anything to do with her family. Like, nobody knows. So that's what this is about. It was fine, it was okay. I wasn't expecting great things from it. It was enjoyable, and it's what I needed in that moment. I needed something just light and easy to read, which that was. And then I read The Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty, which is the second book in the David trilogy, which is the trilogy that we're reading for the Thoughtful Book Club until the end of March. So we're reading The Empire of Gold in March, and I am hoping to organise a live show with some special guest hosts probably towards the end of March, beginning of April. And so I read this one in February, and I think I maybe enjoyed it slightly more than the first one, or maybe the same amount. I'm still not sure. It was good, I enjoyed it. Whether I enjoyed it more than the first one, I don't know, maybe. Ali annoyed me a little less in this one, so there's that. I won't tell you what this one is about. The first one follows Nahri, who is a con woman living in Cairo in Egypt, and then she summons a warrior jinn and gets swept away to the city of Daevabad, where she starts to learn about magic and cultures that she didn't know existed. And then the other POV, or one of the other POVs, is Ali, who is a prince in Daevabad, and then Dara, who is the warrior jinn that Nari has summoned at the beginning of the first book. And this is the continuation of that story, and I think I maybe liked it slightly better. It did suffer a tiny bit from middle book syndrome, especially in this middle section here, but I did still think that it was reasonably well paced throughout, and I enjoyed the directions that the story was going in this one. I think, well, I'm definitely really interested to see what's going to happen in The Empire of Gold, because this one left off in an unexpected way. That's what I'll say. I find it really difficult to talk about sequels, so I'm going to stop there. I enjoyed it. And then, as I mentioned, I am currently reading The Wheel of Time, Book 1, The Eye of the World, enjoying it. Watch that vlog, which will be coming in a couple of weeks' time, for my views on that. This video is very long, so I'm going to leave you here. I will have Ponderful Books linked in the description for you as well, which is my new book parcel service which I've created with my sister, so please do go and check that out and treat yourself to a book especially recommended to you by my sister and I. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button, and I hope to see you here again soon. Thanks, bye.